That's a review of my ninth session of my Castles and Crusades campaign today. We had 5 players, which was really awesome. They started off in a mining town. In the last session, they liberated the mine from the Goblin King. The mining town is booming. It's like gold rush, Old West gold rush situation. So they're townspeople from Arden are flooding into the old mining town to rebuild it and improve it, and they want to get that mine going again. They decided that they were going to do a quest that one of the players in today's group had gotten in the very first session in the campaign. They're finally getting it back around to it, and that was to retrieve the idol Matrona from the goblins that had taken it 25 years ago. So we started off, this session had a lot of really great role-playing segments. Really awesome, probably the best so far of the campaign. It started off with the party wizard. He's kind of a shyster character, and he'd fallen out of favor with his mentor and felt that he'd probably burned that bridge forever, but he was actually, because he was instrumental in taking down the Goblin King, his mentor approached him and just kind of told him, hey, you need to focus on what you're doing, and you have a lot of promise, and come see me when you get back from this, which surprised the character and the player. So which he agreed to do, and so they gathered their equipment and headed off into the Darkmere, which is a pretty large swamp, and they had traveled through the very northern tip of it in the previous session, and when they had done that, Lork, the half-orc ranger, which is played by my son, he had come across some goblin tracks, but they were odd in the fact that they were webbed. They were barefoot and had webbed feet. So that's what, when they entered this time, that's what they were looking for. And he found those and tracked them throughout most of the day, and came upon a camp, which we used this board for. This is something I built a while ago, my son and I. It was good. Like I said, we had good role play during the session. 2 of the characters played Dwarven brothers, and their banter amongst each other was hilarious all day. I described them as if you've read the Cleric Quintet series by R.A. Salvatore, as the Boulder Shoulder brothers, and both of them being Peichel, who's a bonehead and a great character. So they came across this camp. Lork ranged ahead, and the plan was he was going to flank and cause a distraction, and the bulk of the party was going to come in. Well, it didn't really work that way. It kind of worked in the opposite, because Lork is a ranger, and he is the highest level character in the party. He's 3rd level, and just really, the ranger in Castles and Crusade is really well done. If you've had to play a ranger in other editions of D&D, especially the latest editions, night and day difference. It's what a ranger should be, and he just murks goblins, and that's what he started doing. So he actually became the main attacking force in the party. They describe themselves as, I guess, we're the diversion, and which worked out good. The battle was going pretty good until these guys showed up, and these are miniatures I painted from Steamforged Games, Epic Encounters box sets, which are really good deals. So these goblins on giant frogs showed up, and that turned the battle around for a while. It was pretty tough, actually. I think everybody got injured. It was the human fighter in the group. He was down to about, I think, 4 hit points, he said, at the end of the fight. So it was pretty ugly, but they persevered. They ended up using the campsite from the goblins and had a decent camp. There was no random encounters, anything during the night. We rolled randomly for it, and nothing came up. They heard some, during one of the watches, they heard some trolls in the distance, but nothing came close to camp. Next morning, they jumped in some boats, because on this side of the camp was a big lake, and they jumped in some boats that the goblins had used, the ones that didn't have giant frogs, and headed into the lake, because they figured that must be where the where they must be going if the goblins came from there with boats. As they were traveling through, it's a pretty sizable lake, so it took them some time. They're weaving in and out of grown-up trees through the water, but no real places to land. I described the water as like real scummy in spots, and at one point, Lork, who the ranger, he was in the lead boat, and he saw this huge ripple come through one of the scums, but couldn't really see what it was, and which was great. Because it made everybody nervous and nobody wanted to get into the water. Like, they actively avoided that. So they skirted around. They finally came across this camp, and they saw a couple goblins fishing down there. So they tried to be stealthy about it, but the dwarves were having none of that, and so they were quickly spotted, and those two goblins fled back into the camp, screaming and gobbling that the dwarves have come. So they did a beach landing here. The party did, and they were taking arrow fire. The dwarves specifically were taking arrow fire, and one of the brothers took their boat and flipped it upside down and like held it up over him and his brother's head, while the wizard hid behind them for cover, which was actually it was a funny thing, but it was actually not a bad idea. The rest of the party engaged neither magic or missile fire, taking out goblins on the walls. One of the dwarfs, it might have been before, it probably was before he threw the boat up on his head, but the druid actually cast Entangle in here, which stopped a lot of the goblins from coming out. They only had like a few come out that made their saves. Pretty good fight. They whittled down. There was some real funny moments where the goblins there was a bunch of goblins here at the entrance, and the dwarves tried to use the upturned boat as a siege engine and charged in and rolled really badly and ended up hitting the bow of the boat on one of these rocks and stopping dead. It was just a really funny encounter. But they eventually actually did wedge it into the door and kind of stopped the goblins from coming out, and they were able to pick off some more. And then the battle really shifted because a very different goblin came out of that far tent, and he called for a ceasefire, and he was very different than the other goblins for a number of reasons. He wore robes that were once fine, fur-collared robes that were once fine. They're stained and tattered now, but he was covered in little trinkets, and he had this gold crown with mushrooms growing out of it, and kind of a weird looking, not well-made crown, but it was made of gold. The thing that was really odd about him is he spoke perfect and fluent common to them, which they were like, something's up with that. So they ended up talking with him, and he told them that his name was Crugnot, the Lord of the Croakers, and the Croakers are the goblins. That's what they're called, the Croaker tribe. They've actually taken on like frog-like aspects from living in the swamp. So he made a deal with them. He told them that he had the idol, and he would give that to them if he would leave them. And there was like four other Croaker goblins remain alive. Just leave them alone. We'll give you this. So they did a little bargaining back and forth, and he was very kind of grandiose and eloquent in speaking. And he actually spoke to the dwarves in their native tongue. He spoke Elvish. He appealed to, because they were kind of like, well, you guys are like 5 goblins, we'll just kill you. And he kind of appealed to the half-orcs human side, and they agreed to, if they get the idol. And through their conversations with him, he talked about how his followers had gone to these ruins and gotten gold, and that's what they fashioned his crown out of. He would give them a map to that if they left him be, and they agreed to do that. Really fun encounter. I had a lot of fun playing this guy, Crugnot, I'm sorry, and the party was kind of a little bit like not sure what was up with him, because the other thing that they realized about him, because he had all these trinkets and tchotchke crap hanging off of him that he felt were treasures, but none of it made any sound when he moved. Like, he was completely silent other than his voice. and they really didn't know what to make of that. So it was a really fun, different encounter than just straight up goblin killing, which they do plenty. So they took the map and the idol, and they returned to the ruined temple of Matrona, where the ghost of Gwendolyn Hashana, the priestess there, was waiting for them. So she thanked the wizard, his name's Barry, and all of them, and gave them the blessing of Matrona. And when Barry, the wizard, placed the idol back on its stand, it activated this portal in the floor. This portion of the floor slid back, revealing a set of stairs leading down into the darkness, is how I described it. And that's how we ended the session. So in the next session, they plan on exploring those what's beneath the ruined temple. So we're looking forward to that. And again, real fun session. The terrain here is the Paizo Goblin Village Camp. I don't know what they call it. Kind of a neat little set. Comes with those tents and the walls and stuff. The other stuff around it's all Dwarven Forge stuff that I just threw together. Kind of a simple board this time on this deep cuts swamp mat, jungle mat, whatever it is. That worked all right. But simple setup, but it worked really well. I love using terrain and miniatures, but sometimes it's not bad to just go simple and keep it easy. Real good session. Can't wait for the next one. And if you haven't tried Castles and Crusades and you want to play old school D&D with more modern mechanics, better mechanics, try Castles and Crusades. Awesome game, awesome company, and we're really enjoying it. Thanks for watching.